As you may have noticed, the way that we're conducting interviews in the JPost studios is changing a little bit. In our new series, JPost Sits Down With, we strive to have meaningful conversations with the leading voices of Israeli and Jewish society from all ends of the spectrum. In today's episode, I sit down with French politician Shannon Seban, where we talk about the antisemitism she's faced and how she wants to pave a better way for the Western world.
When you use the Palestinian cause in order to gain voters among a certain part of the population, this is unfair. This is unfair, and this is about manipulation.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited for this conversation. I'd love if you can kind of give me a little bit of an introduction about who you are and tell our audience a little bit about what you do.
Sure. Thanks a lot for your invitation at the Jerusalem Post. I'm really happy to be your guest today. So my name is Shannon Seban. I was born and raised in France, in Seine-Saint-Denis department, where I am elected today in Rosny-sous-Bois, a city of, let's say, 50,000 inhabitants. And I am elected there in charge of combating discrimination and of promoting the French concept of laïcité, which is kind of a secularism concept.
That's so interesting. Can you tell me a bit more about the secularism concept?
Sure. So in French, we have what we say laïcité. So the concept of laïcité means that there is a separation between church and state. And it dates back 1905. So that means that the French Republic is protecting the right of every French citizens to practice their religion or not, to believe in God or not, and it's kind of a way or to protect the practice of religion. So that's a principle which is really important for us as being French citizens, especially in the national and international context that we know. So this is like a French specificity that we do not have elsewhere in the world. Let's say, for example, in the US, you do have the concept of secularism, which is not the same one as the French concept of laïcité.
How did you get into that field?
Into politics, you mean?
Into politics and also into that specialty.
I mean, when it comes to politics, I commit into politics very young, when I was, let's say, 16 or 17 years old, because I had the feeling that I need to commit myself for others and to try to make things change for the general interest, let's say. When it comes to laïcité more specifically, and also about my fight against discrimination and antisemitism, racism, and any kind of discrimination, it came also from myself, the background I grew up in, because my parents came from immigration. My father was born in Algeria, my mom was born in Morocco, and I grew up in an environment where tolerance, respect, and mutual understanding were normal. And these were the values I grew up with. And that's why I've decided to commit into politics, by promoting these values, especially tolerance, coexistence, and laïcité. And I do think that today this notion is quite important. And 10 years ago, unfortunately, you had in France various terrorist attacks that happened in our country, and especially because of Islamist terrorism that consider that laïcité is an obstacle to the practice of Islam, which is not the truth, actually. It's absolutely not the truth. So this is what I'm fighting for. I want to make people understand that the Western world is not the enemy to the practice of the religion. It's not the enemy to the practice of Islam. The Western world should be the enemy of Islamism and radical Islamism, but not to moderate Islam, which is a religion of peace at some point.
Yeah. Let's dive in a little bit more to that, because you have a Jewish background and that's kind of the place that you're coming from. I know that you've experienced anti-Semitism within your role, threats, online threats. You've needed security at specific events. What does that tell you about France's climate today?
I will be honest with you. And in my political commitment, as well as in my daily life, as I have always been quite clear. And I guess that in this time period, we need moral clarity and courage. The situation in France, but also all across Europe, and even in the world, from October 2023, is preoccupying. It's preoccupying because now anti-Semitism is becoming normal, is even becoming fashion at some point, especially from some political leaders in France, from the far left. They are nurturing anti-Semitism to gain voters. They are normalizing anti-Zionism, and they are using anti-Zionism in order to promote anti-Semitism. And this is absolutely unacceptable and intolerable. And I do think that we need to make things change. So, of course, as you told it before, I have experienced like anti-Semitism several times in my personal life, but also in my political career. And that's why also I have decided to publish a book in order to say people and to tell people that, okay, I'm Jewish, of course. This is my personal life. This is my personal this is about like my personal, like this is private, you know, but I'm also French. And I do not have to choose between my French nationality, my identity, but also my religion, my faith. This is like two separate things, but we can make it match at some point. You know what I mean? This is all about respecting the value of the countries you grew up in. And this is like the message I would like to share. But of course, as you told it before, I have experienced anti-Semitism from both the far left, but also the far right. And that's why I would like also today to combat anti-Semitism, racism, and discrimination that are coming from the both, from both the far left and the far right.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that looks like on the side of the far left and on the side of the far right? One of them, I think I can kind of guess more what that looks like, but I'm interested to hear it from both perspectives.
Absolutely. And that's a good question, to be honest, because most of people now in France and in Europe especially do think that the far left are the only one who are responsible for nurturing anti-Semitism. But I cannot forget about the past, especially from the far right. In July 2023, so that means before October 7, I have experienced anti-Semitism from a neo-Nazi activist who has decided to escape in Japan for many years now. He is condemned more than 20 times, but he cannot go to jail in France because we do not have any agreement between France and Japan. And this guy actually decided to attack me online on a website where he said that my Jewish nose, was a threat to the world and that I need to do something about it. That Jewish people are a threat to the world. This is anti-Semitism. And I have decided to file a complaint, and now I am waiting for the result of the trial. And then, after October 7, 1 year ago, to be honest, in June and July 2024, when I was running for the French Parliament, I was facing at the time Mathilde Panot, who is the leader of Jean-Luc Mélenchon political party at the French Parliament. I have been attacked because I was seen and considered as being a dirty Zionist. What happened is that they deemed that because I was Jewish, that means that I am a Zionist and a dirty Zionist that was supporting genocide. This is what they told me, that I was a killer of baby and so on. And what happened to me at that time, I really understand that something was changing in France, and know that the situation is getting even worse. We can see it. Anti-Zionism is becoming the new form of anti-Semitism. And I find that this is particularly unfair because these people that are at the moment boycotting my book, that are calling for boycott of artists, of intellectuals, of like any kind of like intellectuals, philosophers, researchers and so on, they are boycotting them because they are Israeli or Jewish. Why is that? I mean, why should Israeli people, why should Jewish people be responsible of the political choices of Benjamin Netanyahu? This is something which is quite different. And I do think that today, moderation in our world is not seen as something which is possible. Whether you are extreme, whether you are not. And we need to fight against this, I think, yeah.
As you were saying that, I kind of can't help but think, you know, how much it reminds me of other historical things, especially in France. If you think about how Jews were targeted, you know, more than 150 years ago, even though, going back, and it's sort of like the line gets blurred between, when is it okay to say I'm not okay with this? And also, when does it start to become remnant of like fascist sort of ideologies when people are boycotting books or when they're saying, I won't listen to this music, I won't come to your business, I won't do this sort of thing. To me, that is just so crazy, especially like looking at French history. So I'm sure that feels just very strange.
I mean, it's not only strange, it's preoccupying. Because at some point in 2025 right now, you can definitely see that the things that wars are moving forward is definitely the same way as they were in 1930, 1940. Like, this is, at some point, the fact that you would like to boycott an artist because he's Jewish, that reminds me to the Holocaust. I'm sorry about that. And the fact that you can have like some people who are silent, that don't want to tell things with clarity and courage, it means a lot. Like, silence is complicity at some point. And we should all stand together, whatever our religion is, whatever our political belief is, against anti-Semitism, as you need to stand against any kind of racism and discrimination. This is about the way we are living together. And as for me, as Jewish, I cannot stand alongside Jewish people, and I cannot fight anti-Semitism if I do not fight any kind of racism and discrimination. That means that on my daily basis, I also stand with Muslims, Christians, and any kind of people that are facing racism. This is really important. This is our common fight to live better together.
I'd love to ask you, I guess, like more on your day-to-day role. How do you take all of these ideals and put it into the work that you're doing?
So what I think is that today in our daily life, we need to denounce. That means that when I see that anti-Semitism is becoming normal, when I see that an anti-Muslim act is happening or an anti-Christian act is happening, my position as an elected official is to denounce it and to say I do not agree with this. And we need to fight this hate. So this is the first part, to denounce it. Then there is another part, which is the solution. And the solution, according to me, is education, but also justice. And I do think that you can try to make things change through education. We need to try to unbuild cliché and stereotypes that are coming from education, both at home but also at school. Because it all comes with education. In the place where I am elected, in the Seine-Saint-Denis department, 40% of the population is aged less than 25 years old. And one of my main priorities is to go into school, to go and to see students, and to unbuild cliché and stereotypes. To say that not all Arabs are violent as they would like to believe. That all not Jews are rich as they think about it. And that fraternity and peace between Jews and Arabs is possible. We need to make things, like students understand that there is a difference between the international conflict between Israel and Palestine and the situation in France between Jews and Arabs. These are two separate things, and I don't want that an international conflict is damaging our relation of peace and fraternity in France. And then the third pillar, I guess, is also about justice. And I do think that we need to be more rigorous and more strict when it comes to punish hate online. And I do think that there is on this topic especially a huge responsibility of the digital platforms and social media in order to prevent the sharing of hate online and so on, to remove the content when they are deemed to be about hate, and then to punish them with a fine if needed. But I do think that we now have several keys to adopt in order to move forward a better world.
I think something beautiful about what you're saying, and like just from the conversation that we're having now, is that you've kind of experienced that hate and people have come for you, for your identity. And instead of turning around and saying, okay, well, now I'm going to be angry and hateful towards you, you're like, no, I'm showing you that there's a different way. I think more people need to be like that. And I think it's really, especially people who are in politics, I think we don't see that enough. So I'm really happy that we're seeing it now. I also think that in terms of social media, it's almost as if the rules only start being made as things happen. Like we've seen a lot of times with like big social media CEOs, they only have to deal with an issue once there's already been some sort of scandal. And hopefully we sort of move towards something that there's almost like not enough in place, because people can do whatever they want online. They can hide behind a screen, say whatever they like, use a different name. Even if they use their own name, there's not really that much punishment that goes with it. Maybe sometimes people end up getting fired because it's, you know, and that in itself is something, but it's still, there's not enough regulation in place. And people have said things to me as well, you know, like I've had so many different anti-Semitic, especially since October 2023.
I definitely agree with you, and especially like online, you can now hate others without like unveiling your identity, and that's an issue. That's an issue, because we cannot like estimate the damage that it can cause, you know, to young students, to young children in our country, but also all around the world. And I don't want now to have the hate that is becoming even more fashion. Hate is not normal. And we are now evolving in a society where hating others is becoming normal. Something is going wrong. And of course, you do have some benefits with social media today in order to be informed, to be connected, to mobilize people also about a cause. Like, you do have some benefits, and we should also be honest about this. This is like the future. This is about technology and so on. But there are also some downsides to innovation, and we need to regulate. We need to regulate it. AI, for example, many benefits, but we can see that we do have some downsides and some disadvantages to these new technologies. And hate online, I guess, is one of the main challenges we have to address in the coming years, and it's urgent.
Is the kind of hate maybe that you experience or that you see going on what inspired you to write your book? Where did you get the inspiration for that?
So my book actually is kind of a small baby that I am unveiling now, and I'm really happy now to present it in Israel, and especially to you at the Jerusalem Post. This book was about a personal story. In this book, I share in total transparency my personal background, how I grew up with parents coming from immigration, from a modest family. We were not especially rich, but like I would like to share about the values that I believe in. I also would like to share about the love of my country. I'm particularly proud of being French. This is a chance for me, and also proud to be Jew, and this is part of my identity, and I respect both. So, like, this book is quite important to me, and this is not like an autobiography, and I definitely want to be especially clear on this. I'm not pretentious. I mean, I'm only 29 years old. I have a lot to learn. But this is like a book when I tell about some stories I have experienced so far, and also where I try to give some solutions in order to combat hate, in order to integrate people in France, because I do think that we have some problem when it comes to immigration and integration in France. But also like to fight any kind of racism and discrimination. I mean, this book is both like a shout of alarm. Like, I would like to make people understand that something is going wrong, especially with the influence, for example, of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is quite preoccupying both in France and in Europe, but also to give some solutions, because I do think that it's all about solutions and hope. And I mean, I hope that in this book, people will see some lights in this dark period.
I think that's really special. And I hope that not only does it get to the people who already know you, but also people who maybe haven't heard about it and they need that feeling of hope. I know that Jews in France may feel unsafe. We've been hearing for years, especially since the terror attacks started happening like over a decade ago, and even before then. So what would you kind of say to the people who are living in France, Jewish people living in France, who may feel like that there isn't a good future for them?
You know, this question, I heard it like on a daily basis.
For sure.
You know, like French Jewish people that comes and say, okay, I want to leave this country anymore. I don't like, my place is not in France anymore. I need to move to Israel or elsewhere, basically. And I mean, this is like, this makes me really sad, because I do think that the ties between French history and Jewish people is quite intense. And I mean, there is a link that no one can contest. And we need now to protect this link and to make it even more stronger, especially in a situation where French Jewish people are facing anti-Semitism on a daily basis. I just want to remind you a figure that also can make the people who are listening to us understand the situation in France. In 2022, so that means before October 7, 2023, you had around, like, let's say 430,000 anti-Semitic attacks that have been identified in France. In 2024, this number rose to more than 1,570 anti-Semitic attacks in France. This is absolutely intolerable. That means that October 7 has changed everything for French Jewish people, that our anti-Zionism is becoming normal, that it's becoming normal that you need to hide your name on Uber when asking for a driver because you need to hide your Jewish identity, that you cannot have your mezuzah on the door because you are Jewish, that you are afraid when you put your school in children because you are afraid of anti-Semitism. This is the reality that we have now in France, but also in Europe and in all around the world. Let's see the situation even in the US. I have been traveling in the US a few months ago, and I can tell you this is the truth. In New York, in Harvard, in many universities, anti-Semitism in campuses has becoming like really preoccupying. And we need to do something about this, because it's about education. It's about like shaping the mindset of future generation. And schools, university campuses cannot become the refuge to hate, basically. So that's why I can understand the fact that some French Jewish people would like to escape, but I will say that this is not the solution. You know, one of my motto when I wake up in the morning is that it's when it's difficult that you have to fight. It's when it's difficult that you have to stay. So my advice and my belief is that we need to fight again and again. I know it's difficult, but there is still room for hope.
How do you think that we can convey, and by we I mean just Jews in general, that kind of message, I think, outwardly? Like, I think Jews themselves now, we understand that anti-Semitism is rising. We know what the statistics look like. We're following it all the time. The people who are the ones who are kind of in between, the people who are maybe saying, I want to fight for this cause, this feels right to me, without really realizing the undertones of what anti-Semitic undertones there are. How do we go about, or in your opinion, how do we go about trying to make people understand that maybe the actions that they're taking are fueling hate? They are going towards something that's a little bit more dangerous.
Actually, to answer your questions, I will say something which is really basic. You know, like anti-Semitism and any kind of racism and discrimination and hate is about ignorance. You ignore what you don't know about. So if we try to, and I know that this is something really hard, it's a hard task to make people understand the roots of the evil, the roots of hate. It will make generations to make things change. Right. But we have to stand all together, and I also think that there is a huge role to play with interfaith dialogue. I do believe in interfaith dialogue in order to make changes in mindset. So on a daily basis, I work with imams, rabbis, and priests in order to prove that fraternity and coexistence between religions is possible. We are all brothers and sisters. And I would like also to make people understand that there is no difference because of religion. Like, whatever your religion is, we all need to fight in order to protect our values, in order to respect others, in order to understand others. And of course, in France, for example, education is key. Education which is delivered by schools and teachers. And I do think that on this field, we have to protect teachers and to teach them all to teach, basically interface dialogue and so on. But we also have to act on education at home and to make parents understand that they have also a huge role to play in order to teach their children about peace and mutual understanding.
I really agree with what you're saying about interfaith dialogue and things like that. I think we can apply those rules also in Israel. You know, there's a lot of spaces that still do that, even after the war, which is very special. I kind of want to talk a little bit now about Israel and France. Where do you think you see the best avenues for cooperation, collaboration between Israel and France, especially because I would say ever since October 7th, I think Israel and almost every other country, there are, strained ties in some way, and it's very difficult for people to know how to navigate it. So where do you see the future, I guess, for Israel and France?
At first, we should not forget the fact that Israel is the only democracy in the region. That's something which is important to remind people first, because I know that in France, especially in the far left, you have some political leaders that want to make people understand that this is not the case and that Israel is not anymore a democracy. Israel is the only democracy in the region. This is like the basis. Then I also would like to remind people that France and Israel are friends. France and Israel are friends, and that the ties between both France and Israel need to be protected whatever the international situation is, through economic ties, cultural ties, innovation, education. Like, there are many things in common and we need to cultivate it. I do not understand, to be fully honest with you, that some artists are being boycotted in France because they are Jewish or Israeli. This is like the worst situation ever. This is like just stupid. And I do think that in France we need to stand together with these artists that are just like promoting culture. And most of them basically are promoting peace. They are not nurturing hate. They are promoting peace through arts, through culture, through innovation, through economy, and so on. So we have to strengthen these ties, and we have to also to denounce what's happening here, of course, but to make difference between Jews, Israeli, and also the government and the choices that have been made by some governments. This is something which is quite different.
I think at the end of the day, what really stands out to me is a lot of times with these things, I think a lot of people just forget that there's just people who are living their lives. Exactly. Most of the time. We hear a lot about, the most extreme actions of human beings, but most of the time people are getting up, they're trying to live their lives, they hear bad news, they feel bad about it, they want to continue on, and it feels like there's just a continuous sort of wave of people pointing fingers and blaming, and I don't think that's really helping the cause so much.
Definitely. I mean, it's, as I told before, it's, especially in France, you have some political leaders that are nurturing antisemitism and anti-Zionism in order to gain voters, especially among the Muslim community. They are nurturing division between French people in order to gain voters. And, I think that we now have in France a toxic cocktail. That means that ideology is setting the fire. Political opportunism, is nurturing the flames, and societal fractures is kind of keeping the fire alive. And we know have, I guess, a huge responsibility to play in order to denounce it, and especially to denounce political opportunism. On a daily basis, where I am elected in Seine-Saint-Denis, the area where I'm elected in, they are mostly people who are from the far left. And I can see the way they are functioning, especially a few months before the municipal election that will take place in a few months in 2026. Political opportunism from Monday to evening, especially when it comes to the international conflict. They are speaking of Gaza and Palestine from Monday to evening. Of course, we can definitely act for a cause, support Palestinian people and so on. This is legitimate. And I am also standing in order to recognize at some point, not now, a Palestinian state. But when you use the Palestinian cause in order to gain voters among a certain part of the population, this is unfair. This is unfair. And this is about manipulation. And I will keep fighting against this, especially in the department and in the area where I am elected in.
You can tell from just you speaking about it how passionate the issue is, and also how I guess inspired, I don't know what the right word would be, but you are to really make change. And I think we need more people like that in the world.
Thank you.
As we start to wrap up, I'm interested to know what you would kind of want Israelis to know a little bit more about French Jews, and what you'd want French Jews to know a bit more about Israelis, because you've been in both places. You've kind of seen there's sometimes a divide probably, or maybe a misunderstanding.
I will be quite short and quite clear. France is a wonderful country. The link between Israel and France are deep. And we should not forget about it. And I will say that Israel also is a wonderful country. It's the Holy Land. And like where all religions are gathered all together, whether you are Christian, Jews, and Muslims, you know, like when I'm going in Jerusalem, I always have this feeling. I'm really proud to be here. I really love like Israel. I really love Jerusalem, but I'm really proud about also my country, which is France. I'm really proud of being French. And I don't have to choose between my Jewish identity and my French nationality. This is part of my identity, and I'm proud to be both. So I just would like to make people understand, and this is also like the topic of this book, that you can be both French and Jew, and so what?
I think that's a perfect place to end. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks
and telling
a
us
lot
about your book, and for just sharing your insights. It's really important for us to hear. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for your invitation. I really appreciate it.